Milo Yiannopoulos on Bill Maher and PewDiePie's drama is all related. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and this is going to be something like the fourth video that I have made where I will be talking about Milo Yiannopoulos, but this is definitely the first time I have ever even mentioned PewDiePie. I am fairly sure I have never even uttered PewDiePie's name in my videos because I never imagined that he would end up as culturally relevant to the general topics of my videos as he has become over the past week. Now, I have said repeatedly that I have a love-hate relationship with Milo, and I have entire videos where I get into that. On the one hand, I adore the way Milo Yiannopoulos talks about current feminism because he so often hits the nail on the head. On the other, I don't like the way that Milo talks about being displeased with being a gay man, nor do I like when he claims that he's never experienced homophobia. The latter part, I believe to be a flat-out lie. But more so, what I respect about Milo Yiannopoulos is precisely what has made him famous, which is his theater and mischief. And he'll be the first to own up to that. There's several people that make better points about feminism than he does, like Karen Strong, for example, who aren't even 1/10 as famous as he is. Milo is famous because he is a provocateur, because he not only said something that nobody else was saying at the time, but he also crosses that line people were afraid to cross, stomps his feet all over the ground on the other side, and then unzips his fly and pisses all over the territory most people were afraid to even approach. That is admirable in terms of his bravery, even if I do not think his message is commendable in many instances, in terms of the takeaway. This was especially troublesome for me last night when I watched his comments about transgender people on Bill Maher, claiming that they have extremely high rates of sexual assault type crimes. I am not sure where that data came from, and it seems like most people feel the same way. Normally, Milo sticks to the facts pretty well in terms of numbers, so I'm not sure where he got that, though his wording was vague. Perhaps there will be some numbers that show that transgender people often get prosecuted with sex crimes, if you include all of the times trans people get in legal trouble for using the wrong bathrooms, or pissing in alleys when they cannot find a public toilet. Both things technically count as sex crime in some states, I've heard. But beyond that, Milo is being a provocateur. And lo and behold, these statements led to a massive amount of pearl clutching from leftist media sources. And now his face is plastered all over my Facebook timeline, as basically everybody I know is shocked and appalled by his remarks on the show. So, if getting attention was the primary purpose of this endeavor, he succeeded. And this is a very small statement from him, and considering the pre-ordering of his book is already doing so incredibly well, like it's the #1 book on Amazon, more and more people are interested in the meat of what he actually has to say, as opposed to the outrage machine around him. Now, let's shift gears and talk about PewDiePie, who had a similar thing happen to him, but for almost diametrically different reasons. PewDiePie made himself world famous slowly by playing video games on YouTube in a period where YouTube was not considered particularly cool in terms of greater sociological trends. If you were to ask the common internet savvy person who their favorite YouTuber was, even just 7 years ago, they'd probably think you were a total nerd, and not the hipster kind of nerd. And considering PewDiePie started his channel over 10 years ago, we can only assume what most people thought of YouTube personalities at the time, and PewDiePie trying to get famous playing video games. PewDiePie catered to a niche market that was completely culturally irrelevant outside of gaming, and related nooks and crannies of the internet. Personally, I was never particularly interested in him for various reasons, mainly that I simply wasn't interested in video games at all, up until a bit over a year ago when I bought a 360 off of a friend of mine and got into a few games like Skyrim and Halo Reach. But I hadn't been playing games since 2005 or so prior. Regardless, I always thought PewDiePie was kinda cute, and I imagined he was a nice guy. But like so many people in the skeptic YouTube sphere, I simply hadn't watched his videos. I had no idea that he was making politically incorrect jokes. But of course, it doesn't surprise me. You see, the anti-SJW, skeptic, and new right type channels are by far the hottest thing on YouTube, and PewDiePie isn't a dummy. I'm sure he's well aware that channels that made at least a decent amount of anti-SJW content, like Leafy is here, have grown more significantly, proportionally, in comparison to any other genre of YouTube content creator. PewDiePie starting to make politically incorrect jokes is nothing more than him still having his finger on the pulse of cultural relevance. It is merely a sign of the times. It is for that reason that Milo Yiannopoulos and PewDiePie do not live separately in a vacuum at this point in time, but actually are showing traits from the same cultural zeitgeist that is affecting the entire internet as well as elections. This zeitgeist is in Steven Crowder, Lauren Southern, Paul Joseph Watson, Blair White, Sargon of Akkad, and even Dave Rubin, the lovable nice guy who is aware that the future is a bit of an asshole, at least in terms of its sense of humor. But Dave Rubin doesn't want to be one of the notorious players in the shit show that is gonna be the next couple of years. The regressive press that has come out in an attempt to smear PewDiePie and Milo so relentlessly not only will not end up on top, they can't end up on top. These are people who either have no ability to get into the minds of the generation that is growing into the prime audience of media consumers that will make or break them as media outlets, or they are obligated by contract or employment to not praise or even speak honestly about their competition from new media. This is nothing less than the changing of the guards. The Milo Yiannopoulos and the PewDiePies of the world are the voices of the future, and the Wall Street Journal and whichever of the several dozen internet blogs that are attacking Milo are the voices of the past. And there's nothing more fucking pathetic than to hear them complain about the new media that is taking their place. There is nothing more pathetic than a washed up rock star on VH1 Behind the Music special trying to make sense of the precise moment in which they were no longer cool. There is nothing less inspiring of any legitimate sympathy than seeing Bret Michaels from the glam rock band Poison talking in an interview in the early 2000s about how Kurt Cobain ruined my career, as if it was just one man's musical idea that marked the end of your band no longer selling records, as opposed to a gigantic groundswell of youth culture that happened to prefer grunge music to hair metal. As I have said before, I will say again, social justice warriors are not cool, and nothing will make this more abundantly clear than when they attack the new media that is taking their place. So here's a word to the wise for anybody involved in the arts, entertainment, and media in any way. When you realize somebody younger and less established than you is upstaging you, the last thing you should ever try to do is to sabotage their career with your own might. You might be able to get away with it once or twice. You might crush somebody's dreams who is smaller than you by getting your famous friend to write a shitty review of his band because the actual audience ended up voting his band as the favorite in some reader poll or something. You might employ a successful blacklist smear campaign based around lies or something, getting them denied bookings, and they might not even know that you did it. You might get what you wanted temporarily by refusing to cooperate with your new competitors and instead trying to squash them out of existence, but you won't win this way forever. And eventually one of the newcomers will beat you in the game of internet industry behind the scenes drama. And by the time that happens, everybody will already know your ways, and they will delight in watching you fall from whatever pedestal you defended tooth and nail for the past years like a fucking vicious asshole. The bigger they are, the harder they fall, and it will be glorious to watch you fall, you fucker. What you should do instead is to learn to adapt. And when you encounter a young person doing something similar to what you do in media, you should try to make friends with them. Do a collaboration, or even just speak kindly about them in interviews. That's the only way to age gracefully in this business. And we all know what happens when people in the media don't age gracefully. That's all for tonight. Drop me a comment, help me out on Patreon if you want more of this, and stay tuned.